on the presenter scenario as we go. My name is Julie Manley, and on behalf of the Michigan chapter of the Association of Hazardous Materials Professionals, I'd like to welcome you to our first webinar in 2013. The title, as you know, is Exercise Your Right to Know, Get the Inside Scoop on EPA's Toxic Release Inventory. For organizational purposes, I'll just give you a few things in advance. First of all lines are muted except for the panelists in some cases. That's automatic, so if you want to ask a question, you're going to have to use the chat or the question and answer capability on the webinar. If you have any difficulty viewing or hearing the presenters, please use the chat function so I can find out that there's a problem. If you have any questions, and we really do hope that you do ask questions, please use the Q&A function of the webinar. Please note that our panelists today are not authorized to address ongoing or future rulemaking or things of that nature. Any questions along those specific lines should be addressed to the EPA Office of Public Affairs, and you can get to that on the EPA website. All questions will be anonymous in the sense that the panelists will not know who asked the question. So you're welcome to keep that in mind as you ask, feel comfortable asking the questions you like to ask. Sure. Again, please submit your questions at any time. We will try to answer as many questions as possible after the three panelists have presented. And we may squeeze in some questions between panelists if there's time to do so. Steve, did you get online?
Yes, Julie, I'm right here. I'm going to speak from Tim's desk.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you. That's a good resolution, I think, at this point. This webinar, for everybody's purposes, is being recorded, and we will have access to it for future reference, and we'll give everybody a link to it in the future. As I introduce the speakers today, I will put a poll on the screen to assess the audience's level of involvement in TRI. This is just to help the presenters understand the audience, because as you know, they can't see you, and we don't really know everybody's background. So all we're going to try to do is really get a feel for what's your level of expertise with TRI. So without further ado, actually, quick question, Steve, would it be easier if you were at your desk, or are you comfortable where you are?
No, I'm comfortable where I am, Julie. I'm going to speak from Tim's desk, and Tim is located in very close proximity.
All right. Well, perfect. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate your flexibility there. Sure. So what I will do at this point is I will switch over. Everyone will then see a poll on their screen. I encourage you to answer the poll. You do not have to close the poll once you take it. I will, as soon as I do the introductions or I see that people have completed the poll, I will close the poll and share the results. Okay, you should be seeing the poll on your screen. So for introductions, I should mention that I never really told you who I am. I am Julie Manley, again, the membership chair for the organization. I'm also president of Guiding Green LLC, a sustainability consulting firm specializing in helping organizations incorporate green chemistry into their business. I also have spent 10 years in the environmental health and safety functions at Abbott Laboratories. I have a Bachelor of Arts from Northwestern and a Master of Public Health and Environmental Health Science from University of Michigan. I'll do the moderating today, so hopefully I sound okay from your end. More importantly, our speakers today, I'm going to introduce everyone right now so that we don't have to interrupt the flow as we go. Stephen DeVito is our first speaker. He holds a PhD and master's degree in science in medicinal chemistry and a BS degree in pharmacy from St. John's University in New York City. Steve is an experienced pharmacist and is licensed to practice pharmacy in New York and Virginia. He joined the US EPA in 1989 as a chemist in EPA's Office of Pollution Prevention and Toxics. Here he used his background in medicinal chemistry to characterize to characterize the chemistry, hazards, and risks of new chemicals submitted to EPA as required prior to commercial marketing. Steve is currently a senior scientist in the US EPA's TRI program, where he provides scientific and other technical support and has been directly involved in most of the TRI program's major rulemaking activities. Steve also coordinates all of the TRI program's international activities and represents EPA in many international fora. So our second speaker is Timothy Antisdale. Tim is currently a computer specialist and contracts manager in the TRI program at EPA. He has worked professionally in the information technology field for 24 years. He has worked for the Department of Commerce, the Navy, the Air Force, and various private businesses. He has a master's degree in computer science from the Watson School of Engineering and Applied Science at the University of Binghamton. He's an Oracle certified professional in database administration and a certified Java developer. Originally from upstate New York, he currently lives in Virginia with his wife and 2 sons. And finally, our third speaker today will be Thelma Codina. She is currently TRI Program Manager with the US EPA Region 5. Thelma has a chemical engineering degree and subsequently became a faculty member at her university in the Philippines. She is a registered professional engineer in the state of Illinois. She was a process engineer for a multinational engineering and consulting firm for 7 years, and then she joined the US EPA in 1995 and is currently, as I said, the TRI Program Manager for the US EPA Region 5. As you can tell, we have an incredible lineup of speakers today, and their experience give us a full picture of the Toxics Release Inventory Program. And again, they are prepared to answer your questions. So I see nobody's asked a question yet. I know we haven't actually started speaking yet, but I do encourage you to use that function as best as you can. So at this point, as we begin, I will close the poll and share the results of the poll so you can see where we stand regarding involvement in TRI. So we have a good span of people going from, with looks like significant percentages completing Form R or reviewing Form R prior to submission, and again, people involved in the process at all levels. So with that, Steve, I am going to change the presenter.
And I'm at Tim's desk. Can you hear me, Julie? Can you see my presentation?
I did not share it yet. I'm in the midst of sharing. I would be in the midst of sharing. Okay, so the poll seems to still be up, so let me correct that. Okay, we can see your screen, so if you can put up your presentation, we should be set to go.
It should be there now. Let me know when you can see it.
I am not seeing it.
I can see your screen.
All right, maybe it didn't successfully change the presenter, so let's see why that happened.
Looks like I have the control, the presenter.
You have presenter control?
Yep.
Can you share your screen?
Yes, let me just get over to that.
Are you? Apologies, everybody. Slight technical difficulties. Tim, what are you seeing? You know what? I have your presentation. Steve, I have your presentation. If you want to walk through it, I can present it.
Okay. All right, then just put...
Oh, you know what? We just got it. You know what? I just see your screen now.
Okay.
You're,
See it now?
I did. Hold on. I did for a second. Yep, I'm seeing your screen. I'm going to do a quick...
All right, so when you say you see my screen, is it from my computer on my end, or is it from your
I
computer?
see the toxics release inventory, your presentation, you're moving your
Okay.
you have control.
Okay, great. Well, sorry, everybody, for the technical glitches here, but anyway, let's get started. I'm going to give a kind of a general introductory presentation to the TRI and just talk a little bit how it started and what type of information we collect and how it's presented and where we're heading with the program. I'm going to try to take my presentation down to about 12 minutes or so to allow enough time for the other speakers and also for some questions. So just very briefly, the toxics release inventory was initiated through law, through the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act of 1986. It basically was a result of the Bhopal tragedy in Bhopal, India, that happened in the mid-'80s. And essentially, what the TRI statutory authority is that it requires facilities in certain industrial sectors, not all sectors, but a number of them, to report their releases of toxic chemicals to air, water, and land, and also other waste management quantities to EPA and the states each year. And EPA is required to maintain this data in a database and make it available to the public. Some TRI basics here is for facilities that are subject to these requirements, those that are in covered sectors and have 10 or more full-time employees, if they manufacture more than 25,000 pounds or process more than 25,000 pounds of a toxic chemical within a calendar year, or otherwise use more than 10,000 pounds of a toxic chemical within a calendar year. By the way, what I mean by a toxic chemical here is a chemical that is listed on the TRI toxic chemical list. We have about 650 chemicals or so on the list, and there are several chemical categories. So that's what I mean by that. But if you either manufacture, process, or otherwise use more than 10,000 pounds annually, you must complete what we call the TRI reporting form R, and that must be submitted by July 1st of each year. And what we do is that we take that information and we make it available to the public. So facilities have to report their quantities of toxic chemicals released to air, released to water, disposed on land, or transferred off-site. There's some other pollution prevention-related quantities that are required to be reported. For example, quantities that are burned for energy recovery or treated on-site or off-site. So there's a lot of different types of information that is required. The Pollution Prevention Act of 1990 expanded the information or added additional requirements for reporting. And starting in 1991, facilities are also required to submit the quantities recycled or burned for energy recovery or treated for destruction. So the Pollution Prevention Act expanded much of the information that was originally required under EPA Section 313. And we take this information, as I said, and we make it available to the public. One of the things that we do is that every year we have what we call our TRI National Analysis Report, where we summarize the most recent information. We may highlight certain things or point out any observations that we may have observed, and all this is available from our website. We have a number of tools that enable one to access our data set, depending upon what it is you're trying to find out or what type of user you are. There's a whole suite of tools that some are very simple, to use. Some are a little bit more complex, a little bit more sophisticated, depending upon the type of user that you are. There's also, we have a mobile application, MI-AHMP, for example. We have a P2, pollution prevention search tool. We have a database that has toxicity information on the chemicals. And I have a website listed at the very bottom of the screen that provides more information on these tools. Who uses TRI data? Just about anybody you can think of. Individuals, communities, environmental groups, industry uses it. Government agencies such as EPA and others. There are a lot of researchers, and it's used for all sorts of purposes, identifying potential risks, prioritization purposes, all sorts of types of uses. So it's a very diverse set of data and has a very diverse set of users. What I'd like to do now is just spend the next few minutes of my presentation walking you through about 25 years worth of TRI reporting. What you're looking at now is a screen that has on the bottom there a list of every year for which we have received TRI data from 1988 all the way up until 2012. Of course, the 2012 data will be submitted by July 1st. And on the y-axis, on the left, we have pounds in billions. That represents the mass quantities reported in aggregate. And over on the y-axis, on the right side of the screen, are the number of reporters, or I should say the number of facilities. So beginning in 1988, which was really the second year of TRI reporting, because that's when those thresholds kicked in, we had about 6 or 7 billion pounds of total releases reported. And as we moved on, notice the number of facilities increased to 1989. The total releases dropped. In 1990, the Pollution Prevention Act was passed. And as I said earlier, that kicked in further requirements. And what you're seeing now, that light blue line that you see, that light blue vertical line represents the other quantities that were required by the Pollution Prevention Act. In other words, those are the quantities recycled or burned for energy recovery or treated for destruction. Notice, though, what I think what's noteworthy here is that the non-releases, or I should say the dark blue line, which represents releases of toxic chemicals, is relatively small compared to the total production-related waste for the same chemicals. So the Pollution Prevention Act enabled collection of much more information, as you can see. And as time goes on here, other things were happening. For example, the concept of green chemistry emerged in the early 90s. I know Julie is very actively involved in green chemistry. Over time, in 1995, we added more chemicals to the TRI list of toxic chemicals. We collected more information there, and just moving on quickly through the years. In 1998, we added, 1997, I should say, we added more industry sectors to our TRI coverage, and the orange line that you see near the bottom, that represents the release quantities submitted by those additional sectors. And the beige line near the top there that you see, that's the other waste management quantities that those additional sectors began submitting to us. Let's move on. In 2000, we published a rule that added certain toxic chemicals, a particular concern, that those that persist and bioaccumulate in the environment, and that enabled us to collect more information. And we did the same thing with lead in 2001. And what's interesting is that you can see how the number of facilities fluctuate from year to year. There's been like this gradual decline in facilities that report. And a lot of that, I think, is just due to consolidation and a lot of industry sectors outsourcing. But anyway, we're zipping through the years here. And as I said, the 2012 data is not yet available. It's being submitted now, literally as we speak, and July 1st is the deadline. In within the past decade or so, the emphasis in the program has been more on access to the information and use of the information. And around the late 1990s, we began developing web-based tools for accessing the information. The very first tool was TRI Explorer, and then in 2001, we introduced the Try-Me Web. It's a tool that enables facilities to submit the data much more efficiently and quickly. Rather than just submitting it using a pencil and paper in a form. We've been getting the data out. We've been struggling for many years to get the information out as quickly as we can. Now we've automated a lot of processes that can enable us to publish the data right away, much more quickly than we have in the past. And I'm illustrating some of that now. Now we have a web-based Try-Me software system. It's been a big help. It's been improved the quality of the data quite a bit, and it prevented a lot of reporting errors, and it just makes it easier for facilities to submit the information and for us to process the information. Again, here are some more tools, TRI.net and MI-RTK, My Right to Know. That's our web app. We just very recently, just a few months ago, we introduced our new TRI pollution prevention tool, and that enables users to access the pollution prevention data specifically from the database and to do certain types of customized analyses. It's a pretty slick tool, and we've been giving a lot of webinars on it. I know that I presented this work to Julie Manley at the Green Chemistry Institute a few times. In fact, we'll be giving a presentation on this at the upcoming Green Chemistry Conference next month here in Bethesda, Maryland. So in the interest of time, I'd like to stop here and turn things over to Tim, my colleague. But I will say that the emphasis in terms of moving forward, the emphasis is going to continue to be on improving access to the information, improving the quality of the information, and getting the data out as soon as we possibly can, and promoting the use of the database for pollution prevention purposes. So Tim, let me turn things over to you.
Thanks, Steve. Can you hear me, Julie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Take Steve's presentation down and put mine up. Okay. Can you see the presentation, Julie?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Because of what just happened with me and Steve, he wasn't able to do the webinar from his own desk, so I had to sit on the sideline here, and I really hadn't heard anything that had gone on up to this point other than what Steve was saying. So good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Antisdale, and I'm going to go talk about what happens to a Form R after it's submitted. I'm going to go over some basic background of the program, just as introductory, and then we're going to talk about data collection, data submission. I know the title of it is what happens to Form R after it's submitted, but I'm just going to spend a couple of slides talking about the submission process to give you some background. And then we'll talk about what happens after a Form R is submitted, how it's the storage and processing of it, how we provide facility feedback to, and the analysis and review of the Form R data, and then finally the dissemination. Going over some of the basics of the program, facilities report the releases and waste management activities of a reporting year from the time period of January 1st through December 31st, with submissions due to EPA by July 1st of the following year. Steve's kind of gone over this already. Example for reporting year 2012, data that actually was collected from last year is due on July 1st of 2013 this year. On average, we usually get about 80,000 submissions from 20,000 facilities. Of the submissions, 97% of them are sent in electronically through Try-Me Web or data collection tool, and 3% still come in on paper. This slide represents the annual TRI reporting cycle with a number of major milestones highlighted. For the reporting year 2012 reporting season, it's symbolized by the blue pipe that says reporting season. It begins in February with the release of the Try-Me Web tool, and runs through July 1st, the reporting deadline. From mid-June through October, the TRI Data Processing Center inputs data and prepares it for dissemination. This is symbolized by the TRI processing pipe. Along the same time frame, we conduct an in-house data quality evaluation. This is represented by the TRI data quality pipe. Consists of finding the 200 to 300 most egregious data quality errors and contacting the facilities about them. At the end of July, we do an early data release, and we update that release in August and then in September. In October, we release the final data set that the national analysis is based on. And then in December, we release the national analysis itself, which cites significant characteristics and trends in the data. So let's talk about data collection. There's two ways to actually, that facilities can currently submit their data to TRI. They can use our reporting tool, TRIMI-Web, or they can submit on paper. I'm just going to go to the next slide in the interest of time because this kind of explains things a little more clearly anyway. So anyway, for the TRIMI-Web submissions, a facility would have to log into EPA's Central Data Exchange to access our TRIMI-Web tool. Once they're in the tool, they can enter their data. There's a couple ways they can do this. They can look at a facsimile of the form and just type the data in, or there's also another mode of entry called questionnaire mode, where the software functions like a lot of the popular tax software, like TurboTax, H&R Block tax software, where the software actually guides you through reporting by asking you specific questions, and then based on your answers, it builds actually the data for the Form R in the background. Once the data is entered, there's a validation and data quality process that goes on in TRIMI-Web. In other words, once you're done entering your data, you click a button in there and say, validate my data, and it gives you feedback on this data and tells you what possible errors we think we see in the data. You look at those, you respond to them, maybe you make changes, maybe you don't. And then if everything looks good to you, then you go ahead and click the submit button and actually submit the data. When you do that, the data is actually transferred over to the Central Data Exchange application database. And then the next step of the process is actually to certify the data, where you go in online and electronically certify the data. When you do that, three things happen. First, the data that sits in the CDX database becomes a legal copy of record. Second, a copy of the Form R data is then sent out to the state TRI programs that are participating in the TRI data exchange. Right now, I think there's 46 states in there, so just about everybody's participating. This goes out over EPA's exchange network. And then the third thing that happens is the Form R data is actually transferred to the TRI processing system, which we familiarly call TRIPS. There's another way that we can collect data, and that's through paper submissions. People can still go to the TRI website and download our Form R, Form A, and Schedule 1 for dioxin data. Basically, they can fill these out, sign them, and date them, and mail them back to TRI, to our data processing center, where the data is received and then actually keyed twice into the TRI processing system. Keyed twice just as a verification that we're keying it correctly. And this is just the graphic of that, basically. A facility would submit a paper form, and it would go into the TRIPS application software and eventually get keyed into the TRIPS database. So after the data is collected, it's stored and processed. As I mentioned in the previous slide, data comes in from TRIMI-Web and it's loaded into the TRIPS database. Likewise, data from paper submissions are keyed directly into the TRIPS database. For the processing, we do basically three general things. We do something called facility data reconciliation. We test for duplicate chemical submissions. And then we run another validation and data quality analysis on the data. The facility reconciliation, I'll just explain that a little bit, it's the process of comparing incoming facility data with existing facility data that we've collected in a previous year. Basically, we compare the facility name, the address, and the industry or NAICS code. If any of these things have changed from the previous year, we have to determine if the change is legitimate or if the facility actually made a mistake. This is important because it could indicate that the facility has moved, which means they should be assigned a new facility ID, or if the facility is actually reporting under two different facility IDs, in which case they should only be reporting under one, so we got to figure out which one is the correct one and get them to change their data over to that one. The other thing we do is test for duplicate chemical submissions. This is primarily doesn't happen too often anymore, but sometimes people would actually submit data from TryMeWeb and then turn around and fill out a paper submission and also send that in. So what we'd have to do then at the data processing center is figure out which of those submissions is actually the active one, or if the facility actually meant to send two in, or one's a revision for the other, or there's a number of different situations that can exist. So anyway, if somebody sends in two of the same chemical reports from the same facility, we have to rectify that situation. And then we run, finally, validation and data quality tests over the data again. The results of these are stored in the TRIPS database. If you remember back to the TryMeWeb slide, we actually ran, there's validation and data quality routines that run in there and give feedback for the users. So when we do it in the TRIPS database, it's primarily the same thing, but it's more so for the benefit of the paper submitters, because they have seen no feedback up to this point. And in the next slide, we'll talk about where they actually do see this feedback. But nonetheless, we run it on all the data for consistency, and we post the results. Also, I'll get to that in the next slide. The last thing I want to talk about under the validation and data quality test is we determine something called notice of significant errors. And in this process, basically, if the data comes in and has an egregious error in it, such as the facility forgot to put in their facility ID, or forgot to list the chemical, or the CAS number, or just left out a certain section of the form, these are things that we consider significant errors. And as such, we can't process the form any further. When we find one of these, what we actually do is print out a letter and send it to the facility and make them aware that we have found a significant error in their submission and ask them to correct it. They have 21 days to do that. If they don't comply in 21 days, we actually send them another letter called a notice of noncompliance, and that gives them another 21 days to respond. If they don't do so, at that point, we turn the case over to our Office of Enforcement and Compliance, and then they handle it from there. And this is just a graphic of just what I was talking about. The data basically gets into the TRIPS database, and we perform these three general steps on it: facility data reconciliation, duplication check of submissions, and then the validation and data quality test. The next step in the process is to provide feedback to the facilities on their Form R submissions. We do this through an online system called the Electronic Facility Data Profile, or EFDP, as we know it for short. The EFDP system actually resides inside the TryMeWeb application. After a facility submits Form R information to us and we process it, we post an EFDP report for them to view in the EFDP system. Every time we post an EFDP report for a facility, we send them an email message notifying them that a new report is ready for their viewing. The EFDP report shows a number of things, including the date that the Form R was received by us, which is important in some cases. We echo back the data that we received to let the facility know that we actually got their data, and they can check whether we've actually entered it into the database correctly or not. In some cases where they send in paper forms and we have to key that, sometimes that's an issue if we can't make out the writing, and we might type in something different than they meant. And we also show the validation and data quality messages that were produced in the previous step where we process the data. Again, paper submitters haven't seen any feedback on their data. This is our way of giving them feedback to let them know if we think their data, for more or less purposes, is correct or not. And there's various other information on the form. A lot of facilities like to print out their EFTP report and save it either in hard copy or on their computer. And this gives them a record of their submissions for the year. And it also serves almost as a data receipt, if you will, that they actually did submit data to EPA if they were ever asked about it. The one thing, too, that I wanted to mention at the bottom of the screen, I talk about revision of data. Basically, what we want facilities to do with the EFDP is review it, take a look at their validation and data quality messages, and if they feel that their data needs to be revised, if we've actually pointed out a problem to them in their data, then they can revise the data by going into TryMeWeb and doing a revision in there, or submitting a new paper form, or they actually can take the EFDP report itself, print it up, mark it up, and send it, sign it, date it, and send it through the mail. And this is just a graphic, basically, of the feedback that we provide to facilities through the EFDP procedure. A facility would go into the CDX login, they'd log in, then they'd get into the TryMeWeb application, and they could see their EFDP report inside. The EFDP report's generated dynamically from the TRIPS database, and as I mentioned before, each time we make a report available in EFDP, we send an email out to the facility letting them know that a report is available for them. In the next step, a data quality analysis of the data is performed. This occurs in July through August of the reporting cycle. There are two independent efforts that actually go on in this process that actually converge. The first one's done by EPA. We can conduct our own in-house analysis of the data in conjunction with the regional offices. We identify 200 to 300 facilities that we feel have significant data quality issues, and then we, EPA headquarters in the regions, contact them, explaining the issue to them and seeing if we can either get them to make a correction or explain the issue. In some cases, we find issues that we think exist, but in a lot of cases, the facilities themselves can explain this. I think one example a few years ago, a mining facility, actually, their releases dropped off considerably from one year to the next. So we caught this in our data quality analysis. We contacted them and asked them about it. Turns out their reporting was actually legitimate. They moved from one tract of land to another tract of land, and it turns out that the new tract of land that they were mining actually had different composition of chemicals in it. So, and apparently they were less than the original land that they were working on. So it turned out that the data quality issue that we saw actually had an explanation for it. And I think we actually forwarded that information into our national analysis. I'm sorry. The other thing that goes on is we have a third-party contractor perform an analysis on the data too. This analysis is primarily a top-down analysis looking for data quality issues that would impact national, state, chemical, or industrial trends. In other words, this analysis looks at the big picture, calculates the number of totals in those particular categories, and then compares them to prior years. If we see a skew or a significant difference in trends, then we dig down deeper into the data and try to see if there's one facility that's causing the skew, which in many cases there is. And then we look at that facility closer. And usually what happens from this analysis is probably a dozen or two, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen facilities get targeted, and that list gets forwarded to the in-house data quality analysis, and we contact those as part of the normal process that we go through with the 200 to 300 facilities. And this is just a graphic of that, basically. Information from the TRIPS database is actually forwarded into the EnviroFacts database to accomplish this. That goes through an ETL tool, an extract, transfer, and load tool, which is just a piece of software that its primary purpose is to move data from one database to the other. And then we conduct our in-house data quality analysis. A third-party contractor conducts the analysis, and that results in us contacting a number of facilities about data issues. Okay, Steve's telling me I'm running out of time here. So the last thing that we do is disseminate the data, and I won't go into all these, but there's a number of EPA sites and tools that we disseminate the data to. They're listed here. There's also some non-EPA sites that are prominent and noteworthy. I've listed a few of those there. And this all occurs usually in the time frame of, starts in July when we do our preliminary data release, and then goes through October. October being the date that we release the final data that's part of the national analysis. And then we release the analysis, the national analysis, which occurs usually in usually occurs in December to January of each year. As Steve mentioned, the national analysis contains a number of summaries, trends, and significant findings in the data. There's a lot of interesting things. If you're new to the TRI program, this is the final thing I'm going to say. Go to the National Analysis website that I listed there, the URL, and there's great introduction of what the National Analysis is, including a video and a lot of good introductory information. It'll tell you about the program. Many things that Steve just mentioned are echoed there. And then the last thing, this is just a summary slide to kind of show you all the systems and databases that the Form R data is transferred to. And I'm going to stop right there because I think we're running long. So go ahead and take it away, Julie.
Thank you very much, Tim. And Steve, thank you for your earlier presentation. I am going to pass presenter control over to Thelma. So Thelma, you should be able to share your screen. I'm going to take you off mute. For those of us on the phone or hearing the audio, it is possible we may have an audio kind of a... You're unmuted now. You should be able to hear. We may have a little bit of feedback, which we'll try to minimize, but we haven't figured out the best way. So Thelma, I'm passing it over to you.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good morning, good day, everyone, and thank you for spending your time with us. I am going to, my presentation builds up on what Steve and both Steves have presented. Okay, I am going to clarify, basically, Steve and both Steve DeVito and presented a kind of a big picture of the TRI. Now, I'm going to talk about what is most of the questions that I hear from facilities. So I would basically, facilities sometimes are confused about what is to be reported as release and what is reported as waste management under the PPA, Pollution Prevention Act. So that is the goal of my presentation now, clarification of release and clarification of what is to be reported as waste management. Now, I'll start with a preface because a lot of facilities are confused about release under the Resource Conservation Act and release under EPA Section 313, commonly known as TRI. Now, release considers the intent of each statute. RCRA mainly aims to manage waste so that future superfund will not occur. That is to prevent future superfund. Whereas EPA Section 313 mainly informs communities of the presence of the toxic chemicals in their location. So, release under EPA Section 313 is any spilling, leaking, pumping, pouring, emitting, emptying, discharging, injecting, escaping, leaching, dumping, or disposing into the environment. And this includes abandonment of discarding of barrels, containers, and other closed receptacles. All releases has to be reported unless exempt. There are certain exemptions. Okay, so if you would, examples of releases under Section 313, disposal into a landfill, injection, any permitted release or non-permitted release, releases from raw materials or in-process material, land application, coal combustion byproducts used as road fill. This is considered as release. Mining reclamation. Now, if you can see Form R, you can see what I'm talking about. Release in Section 5, release, there is underground injection well, disposal to land on site, even RCRA permitted land disposal. and then you have other disposal or surface impoundment. How about waste management? Okay, we have no definition of waste. That is what you will be reporting under PPA. And determination sometimes will be in a case-by-case basis when there is kind of a gray area. But we are generally guided by the intent of the statute, community right to know, EPA section 313 questions and answers, which you can find in the epa.gov/TRI or the TRI homepage. Or do a Google. And then there is also another waste guidance called Waste Management Activities, Recycling, Combustion for Energy Recovery, Treatment for Destruction, Waste Stabilization and Release. And this is generally appropriate to an on-site waste management. I could not emphasize enough, only report materials that are managed as waste. Facilities sometimes report materials that are on process or in the raw materials or in the product. Now, for example, during extraction of oil using hexane, okay? When hexane is recovered from waste management, then that hexane should be reported as recycled hexane. However, the reuse of hexane in extracting oil is not recycling of waste. The hexane in this case is an in-process material. You should not report it. I have here, if you can see it, a process diagram of hexane used as such. Hexane in this case, and the recycling of, not recycling, the reuse of hexane in this case is the heart of the process. So this is an in-process material. And I have here another, only report materials that are managed as waste. Example, report waste sent off-site for recycling. Do not report materials sent off-site for reuse. For example, material reused directly without adding or taking anything from it. It is deemed as raw material. It is not waste. However, material management constituting disposal is reported as released. You can go back to slides 4 and 5, and you can say what is constituting disposal, if it is placed directly to land or things like that. Now, I would like to caution you, because a lot of people are sometimes confused with chemical threshold calculations with what is reported in the Form R, releases and waste management. I have a lot of questions saying, you know, we do not, our report is 0 for releases, 0 for waste management. Do we still need to file a report? Yes, if you have fulfilled the 3 criteria for reporting, which is facility. Steve has mentioned this. The SIC code and the NICE code, the type of industry that you have, 20,000 hours for employees, and then you have crossed a chemical threshold. Where can you get information? EPA, the TRI homepage, epa.gov/TRI, and then there is also material guidance, http www.epa.gov/TRI, reporting materials guidance, and then the EPA TRI information centers. You can call this. This is the hotline. And we are now in the midst of a data quality campaign, which Tim has mentioned, and basically the people we are asking for people to report the RECRA ID number of the offsite facility they're asking, they are sending their waste to. And then basically they're saying, well, the waste did not go to the unit where the RECRA ID is being issued to. Well, we say the answer is this. If the facility has a RECRA ID number reported, and these are the documents that will tell you the preamble to the 1988 rule, and there is a question and answer document, question 566. So if the offsite facility has a RECRA ID number, you should put that in section 6.2. With that, my presentation is concluded, and I give back the control to Julie. Julie?
Thank you, Thelma. I think, if you don't mind, I'll leave your slides up on viewing, just because depending on the situation, we may need to flip back and forth. Thank you all to the three presenters, Steve, for giving an overview and evolution. Tim, again, for clarifying on how Form R is processed and how the data is then transferred, and then Thelma for more of a regional reporting perspective. We do have several questions coming in, so I am not muting Thelma because I think some of the questions will go directly to you.
Okay.
So, Thelma, I will direct a couple your direction.
Okay.
And then I'll put myself on mute, and that'll help again. In this case, someone's writing, we manufacture dies for auto panel stamping. Metals are our only TRI chemical. All the waste metal, including metal turnings, galvanized clips, miscellaneous steel, are scrapped and recycled off-site, except for some dust and grinding or milling. Are they exempt from reporting?
Okay. Well, it depends. Okay. What is your raw material? Could it be considered article exemption? Article. If it is, then you can take a look at the article exemption. But I think in your case, since you are generating dust and grindings, you could not take the article exemption, and you have to report the constituents of the EPA section 313 constituents of your material. Basically, I believe, based on what you are saying, I believe that you would there would be more than 0.5 pounds released during the calendar year. So that will violate the article exemption. Next question, if you can.
Okay, the next question is, if I filed in 2011, but my thresholds don't indicate I need to file in 2012, do I still file showing no thresholds?
You do not need to file, because for you to be required to file, you have to meet all of the three criteria. Number one is the type of industry you're in, NAICS code. Number two, if the number of your full-time equivalent employee is at least 20,000 hours, and the third one is if you have met the chemical threshold. Any chemicals that, if you have fulfilled the first two requirements, any chemical that meet the threshold will be reported. We'll file a Form R for each of those chemicals. If you don't reach the threshold, then you do not need to file, because you need to, all the three criteria has to be met.
Great, thank you. Another question is, how should building demolition materials like steel from old structures or removed boiler tubes be treated?
Okay, building materials is the facility still operating, or is it during the facility is still not is already closed? Okay. Now, building materials, depending, there is a lot of ifs, buts, and wherefores here. So basically, I would say that see if your building materials could take the structural component exemption. If they can take this structural component exemption, then you are not reporting that. Otherwise, you could be reporting that. Depends upon where it goes. If you want additional clarification, you can email me, codina.salma@epa.gov, because there are many ifs, buts, and wherefores in this question. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you. I'm looking for a few other questions as we go here. Okay. Okay, I received several data quality requests at the beginning of May for reporting year 2011. Why am I receiving this so late and so close to the reporting year 2011 deadline? Actually, several requests around 10 or 11.
Okay. Okay. Now, as Tim has mentioned, this is a process, and one of the processes is the in-house data quality. So, unfortunately, the process takes this long, so that so that it reaches. I mean, it reaches you during May. Now, in Region 5, you should be glad that you got that data quality question, because that means that when we get this list from headquarters, we weed out facilities that we would want to do enforcement action on. And basically, if you reply to us in a timely manner, we are treating this is for Region 5 only. We are treating this as a compliance assistance, and if you reply to us in a timely manner, we'll just close the book on you.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much. We are now at 1 o'clock. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today, Steve, Tim, and Thelma. I really appreciate all the time you've put into this. And any questions that were not answered, there may have been a few, I will review with the presenters after this, and we will try to make the information available. Again, they'll be anonymous, so if you have any, you're welcome to email me, and we can either contact the presenters themselves or somehow get you in touch to get the answer that you deserve. Finally, when we close out of this webinar today, there'll be a very, very brief survey. It takes about 1 minute of your time. If you don't mind, if you could answer that, that will help us understand how this webinar was received and help us in planning for the future. So thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate your time today, and please don't hesitate to be back in touch. Steve, Tim, and Thelma, thank you so, so much. I should also mention very quickly, there will be recording made available in the future. As soon as we can compile it and get it available to post, we will do so. So thank you, everybody.